Macron. He could have made those remarks in private to the governments he criticized. Your reaction, why he made it as a public statement?
It points out to a switch in his foreign policy, because so far his foreign policy in the Middle East was to try and keep a delicate balance between the pro-Iranian and the pro-Saudi axis in the region. But now he made a very clear statement, as opposed to other European leaders who've kept pretty quiet about what's happening in Iran. And here very clearly he took a stand against the Israeli/United States/Saudi Arabia position on this crisis. Some of the reasons are, first of all, Europe has economic interest in Iran and in keeping the nuclear deal. They've had their companies reinvesting in Iran. That's one. Two, since President Charles de Gaulle, all French presidents always wanted to differentiate themselves from the United States when it comes to the Middle East. And also the third point is that Emmanuel Macron is under also the influence of the top echelons of his foreign ministry, the Quai d'Orsay, and also major think tanks in France, such as IRIS, that are pro-Iranian and think that France should cooperate with Iran, implement the nuclear deal, and all that explains his statement.
Emmanuel, I'm interested in your take as someone who watches so carefully the diplomatic picture around the world. You have one argument that says countries should not interfere in another country's affairs. Clearly, there's also the economic and those domestic interests you mentioned that are driving it. And others that say it is the responsibility to support human rights and those protesters who are asking, in many cases, for human rights. What's your take in this case?
Look, generally countries that make this argument, you should not themselves interfere in other people's business. So the Iranian supreme leader, Khamenei, complained about what he called the U.S. and Israeli interference in Iranian politics, but of course Iran is interfering in the politics of Lebanon, of Syria, of Yemen, etc., etc. I do think that the West should always find a balance between realpolitik and principles. The secret of foreign policy, of course, is to find the right balance, but at least there should be a clear stance when it comes from democracies. As a matter of fact, at the end of the Cold War, I think that precisely because President Reagan and Margaret Thatcher in the UK had a very clear stance against the Soviet Union and the violation of human rights, what they proved at the time was that you can find a connection between human rights and realpolitik. There's not necessarily a contradiction, and I think this should be the stance also of Europe. It's definitely the stance today of the Trump administration.
It's not business or human rights.
Right.
It doesn't have to be one or the other.